The science portion of the ACT is going to involve three different types of questions: data representation, research summaries, and conflicting viewpoints. And each one of these corresponds to a passage. So on this example, if we're looking, passage 1 is going to be all about data representation. We can tell that because there's all these graphs and charts and stuff in all of the studies. So we have three different studies in data representation. Let's take a look at these. Question 1. In which of studies 1 and 2 did some of the fruit flies live for more than 75 days, and what diet were those fruit flies fed? Okay, so in study 1, if we look here, none of the flies lived past 50 to 55 days in study 1, so that one's out. Study 2, this is how we're reading the graph. We're looking at days on the bottom. Study 2, well, we have a couple that appear to get better, but notice that at 75, only one of them is longer than, or still alive at 75 days, and that's the one with the circles. So if we go up to the circles here, we see that's the 5% SY medium, which is answer A. Okay, question 2. Question 2 says, during studies 1 and 2, why did the size of the fruit fly population each to decrease rather than increase? You have to look at how the study's formatted. And if you look at the study, notice that in this case, there's 200 virgin female strain in fruit flies. If we look at study 2, it says again on study 2. On study 2 it says 200 virgin female strain in fruit flies. And if we look over here, we have on study 3 is again our virgin female on both strains of fruit flies. I'm sorry, these fruit flies were not mating, therefore there's not going to be any more fruit flies. So if we look at this, the birth rate is going to be 0, right? They're all virgin, they're all female. So it's got to be a F or G. And in this case, the initial population was female, virgin female, so the answer is G. Okay, question number 3. Question number 3 says, study 1 differed from study 2 in which of the following ways? So if we look at study 1 and study 2, that's again, you have to look at how they're set up on their descriptions. They are identical in everything else. We only change one thing at a time in these studies, and except the amount of sugar and killed yeast. So if we take a look at the answers here, the first two we're talking about male and female. Everything's female on these, so it's not A and B. And then study 1 has 15 versus study 2, which has 5. In this case, the answer would be number D, or answer D, because study 1 had 15 versus 5 in the second. So let's look at question number 4. Suppose that an additional trial has been performed where we got to find 12%. Okay, how long would it exist, or would this strain X live in that case? So if we look at study 3, this is a data interpretation. So we have to read in between the lines. So we're looking at strain X fruit flies here, and they're asking for 12%. Well, 12% is not on the graph, but 12% is between 10 and 15%. So at 10% it's 58.6, 15 is 55.6. And if we look at the question, it says between, so between those two numbers, 55.6 and 58.6. The answer would be G. Number 5, question number 5, again, how you read the data that's presented. The researchers had predicted that decreasing a fruit fly's ability to detect odors would increase its lifespan. Okay, using study 3, is this consistent? The difference between the strain N and strain X is that strain X just can't smell as much. Okay, so here's the stuff, and we compare the same percentages against each other. So for 15%, 55 is greater than 41, so yes, they'll live longer on strain, the ones who can't smell as well. 10 to 10, 58 to 44, same thing. And if we go up the case here, we'll find that all of these are individually larger than the same thing over here for the same amount of percent on sugar. That being the case, the answer, this one would be C. Yes, for each strain, the average life of strain X was longer than those of strain N. Okay, question number 6. Suppose the researchers wanted to determine whether a defect in the ability to detect odors would change the lifespan of fruit flies fed 15%, okay, with live yeast as designed. Which of the following experiments should be performed? Well, if we look at study 1 and study 2, the difference between these two is that study 1 used 15% and study 2 used 5%. Since we're wanting to find out about study or the 15%, it's got to be study 1. So it's got to be one of the first ones. Now, they also wanted to know if you disabled their ability to smell, then we would use the strain X. And strain X would be the one that's answer number 1, F. The last question in this case is the results of which 2 test tubes should be compared to determine how a reduced calorie diet affects lifespan in the absence of live yeast and additional odors. Again, you have to read up in the descriptions here. In the descriptions, if we go along, tubes 1 and 3, no additional substance was added to tube 1. So there's one of them. Now over here on study 2, we have no additional substance was added to tube 4. So it's tube 1 and tube 4, which is question or answer A. That's part of interpreting data.